the fact that the political discourse and the media discourse in this country has become so fractured, and your show is one of the last remaining ones that doesn't push any ideological agenda and tries to talk up to rather than down to the audience. What has caused, or maybe my premise is wrong, but do you think there's been a coarsening of the discourse, and if so, what has caused it?
Yes. So I'm really terrific as yes, there's been a coarsening of a dialogue because we're all part of it. Everybody knows that's the truth. But I tell you, I have a slightly different take on why it's happened. I think it's the downside of a terrifically positive development in our democratic society, which is the opening up of these many different resources of information. Just with 15 years ago, we did assemble a group like this in an evening like that, like tonight, and and let's say the subject was Afghanistan, a real world discussion about Afghanistan. A bunch of in a group of say 99% Americans, okay, this kind of group, and say, okay, let's talk about Afghanistan. I would guess that of this kind of group, there would be a 98% shared set of facts that everybody would bring into the tent that we would talk to, because all of us would have read our local newspaper, watched one of 3 nightly news programs on commercial television. We'd have chosen whether it was Cronkite or Huntley Brinkley or whatever, and read Time or Newsweek or something. But whatever it was, then the discussion would begin. The argument might then begin in the tent, but we would have begun with a shared set of facts. We no longer have a shared set of facts. And that is the downside of what is really a good thing, because now we have thousands of sources of information, or hundreds, depending on however you want to access them, rather than 5 or 6 that we used to have. So it's a healthy development that the internet has opened up all kinds of things, and cable television and shout radio and all that sort of stuff. I think that's terrific. The problem is we're still at mid-course change here. We haven't gotten to the good parts yet. We've gotten to the good parts in that it's a lot of stuff out there. People are talking about things, and they're talking about it sometimes at the top of their lungs. They're talking about it in a misinformed way. They're lying sometimes. I know, I hate to be the one to bring that news to you. But there's an awful lot of words being spoken and written and displayed on iPods and wah-wah-wads and this and that and twits and tweeters and all good things. Those are all mechanical things. It's the words that we need to come back on now. We need to kind of think, okay, no, wait a minute. For instance, I tell our folks at the NewsHour, we have always been considered in the terminology of our current terminology, we would be called a first responder in the news business. In other words, you would get the news from us first. And we still have an element of that with our news summary, and we're still very much old-fashioned inverted pyramid. What are the most important things you need to know at any given time when we go on the air, et cetera, on our website or whatever. But what I'm telling our folks now, wait a minute. There's an increasing number of people who first hear about something when somebody shouted about it on a radio program or sent some weird blog. They need to have a second or third place to go that they trust and say, what are the facts? Where exactly was Barack Obama born? Or whatever it is. And there's some place you can go. And that place has got to be the same people, but I don't mean literally the same people, but people who are in the serious business of journalism and who still want to know what happened, for people who want to know what happened, and how it happened, and where it happened, and all of that sort of stuff. Then they can go back, if they want to the shouters and pick up on that or whatever. But at any rate, we haven't gotten there yet. But I also believe, and there's a long answer, sorry about this, Walter. McNeil used to say to me all the time, Robert McNeil, my now retired partner, Lehrer, he'd say, Lehrer, if you're ever a guest on our program, we never have you back because your answers are so damn long. But at any rate, What we need, and what we're beginning to see the beginnings of, is the rebirth of the. This is very relevant to Sid Harman. What he's going to be up to at Newsweek is a kind of rebirth of the old gatekeeper. I'm a gatekeeper, and I'm an old gatekeeper. And gatekeeper in journalism terms, somebody who goes through the 15, let's say there are 15,000 stories that break every 24-hour news cycle. Somebody's got to go through those and pick out the 1,000, the 5, the 10, the 15, the 30, the 60, whatever news organization it is that you're actually going to report on. And as I say before, in the old days, there was the local newspaper and all that sort of stuff, and people have turned their backs on that in some ways, some of the younger people, but not so much as we've been led to believe, because there's increasing evidence that people say, wait a minute, I don't want to spend all day reading blogs. I don't want to spend all day listening to people shout on the radio or on cable television or whatever. I want somebody else to listen to all that stuff for me and put it together in some form. It may be 7 or 8 different forms all at once. It may be some part of it may be print, some of it may be online, some of it may be on cable television, maybe you're on public, whatever it is. But there's going to be, people are going to have to rebuild trust and develop the trust of folks who are going to be these gatekeepers, and they're not going to be, trust me, they're not going to be old white men anymore. But there's a new place that is developing for this, but we're not there yet. But it's coming, and we're in the mid-revolution.
What evidence do you have that people still want that role to be played? I want it, you want it.
Yeah, well, the young people want it too.
Okay.
Increasingly, on our we have we're not the only ones doing this, but our folks are really dedicated to this. We're working on it very hard. Is doing a lot of outreach with the internet, with all the twits and the tweeters and the wah-wahs, and increasingly the young people say, yeah, but what was the Hiroshima thing about? What exactly? Who can I go to get some information on this? Or the stimulus package. The stimulus. What was that? People are all the Republicans say this, the Democrats say that. I don't know who to believe. Where do I go to get some information on this? And we're getting feedback. We're getting more feedback now than we ever have. It's just about hey, help us find out. Help me find out what happened. Help me find out the baseline on which whatever, because they're already getting the opinions. All of that's out there. Anyhow, that's the evidence, and the other serious news organizations with websites are having the same experience. New York Times. I don't know about CNN. CNN is a very widely used news website, but I've been told, but I don't know this for a fact, that they are also experiencing the same thing, that the real pushback, particularly among young people, is, hey, tell me what happened. Just tell me what happened.
The business model, you're lucky, you're in public broadcasting. Do you see a business model working for that in regular commercial broadcasting and print?
Walter, I do, but I think it's going to take a lot of trial and error. It's going to take people like people like me to be much more experimental than we have been up till now. In other words, use the freedom to experiment and not have to depend on a bottom line. So we can find out if some of these things are work or not work, and we're pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. And but I'm the first to admit up until recently we have not done the job that we should. That's why. But the new NewsHour, the PBS NewsHour, is designed to do that very thing, to try some things that haven't been tried and see if they work. And if they work, well, then maybe they can be transferred into the commercial world.